Oh, hello. Welcome to Travel Trivia ASMR and another gentle jaunt around the world. This is a series of little geography quizzes, although they're not quick-fire quizzes by any means. There'll be some questions in here which you might know the answer to straight away, whereas others won't. And there are some questions which you might be able to take an educated guess at. And whatever the answer is, the questions are designed to give us an opportunity to discuss and explore. So, if there's any question that you particularly want to know the answer to straight away, you can use the timestamps to jump to the chapters and find those answers. Just have a look in the description and you'll see where to go. But first, let's find out where we are today. I mean, it's no great secret because you've seen the title of the video. But here we are in India. And you may have guessed the first question I'm going to ask you relates to what you were looking at right at the start. I'm recording this video towards the end of 2025, and it's not that long ago since India's population became the largest in the world. But when did the population of India exceed 100 million people? Which is itself an extraordinary number of people for one country to have. But when do you think it happened in India? I must admit, before I looked it up, I took a guess, and I was way out. And there's a good reason why I wanted to start with that question, because when I visited India, I was a little bit anxious about how many people would be there and whether it would be a difficult experience. I won't give the game away yet, but suffice it to say, it's now my favourite country. Well, of course, there is no India without Gandhi. You can't be in India very long without seeing his face. And I couldn't resist this classic pub quiz question, which admittedly does have a one-word answer, but it's worth exploring the story of the answer which many people might give incorrectly. What was Gandhi's first name? If you think you know. Well, let's see. And speaking of names of people you think you know, I wonder if you know this one. India is, of course, the world's largest population of Hindus. So there's a bit of a clue to answer that first question. Somebody or should I say something, in India is Mother Ganga. The third question is, who is Mother Ganga? Question 4 will take us to surely the most recognisable place in India and possibly even anywhere in the world, the Taj Mahal. You know what it looks like. I barely need to explain what it looks like. But did you know that the 4 minarets around the Taj Mahal, which is to say in the 4 corners, they're not exactly vertical. They lean slightly. Why? There's actually more than one answer to that question. Now, the joy of these videos is it's things that I have discovered during my time exploring the world. And so there's some geography facts, there's some travel tidbits, some tourist tips, and that almost always includes something about the flag, because I'm obsessed with looking at the flag and asking, well, what does it mean? And what struck me about the Indian flag when I was there is, well, what's that thing in the middle? You can probably picture it. You've got your horizontal stripes and you've got your symbol in the middle. We'll see it later. It is a circle with 24 spokes. Indeed, it is a wheel with 24 spokes, but why 24? What is it about the number 24? Why are there 24 spokes in the wheel at the centre of the Indian flag? And I wonder if you know this one. You've heard of the city of Jaipur, the Pink City, a beautiful place. Have you heard of the Vrihat Samrat Yantra? It is the world's largest what? I'll show you a picture of it later, see if you can work it out. But even before you see the picture, India has a lot of large things. My resounding takeaway from India, in fact, was that everything is huge, whether it's the size of populations or the size of monuments or the size of helpings in restaurants. Everything is enormous. So this is the world's largest example of what in Jaipur. We'll be going back into history for number 7, and as a British person, I of course grew up knowing Indian cities by names other than what they are known as today. But which of these place names for these three Indian cities was just an English version of a local word? In other words, the city was known to local people by one thing and to English people by another, but did they come from the same root, or were they completely different? The cities in question, Bombay, Calcutta and Madras, are of course now Mumbai, Kolkata and Chennai. So which of them have a common origin with their previous names? Now we go into slightly controversial territory for number 8, and we'll delve into why it's controversial later. It concerns Dharavi. Or is it Dharavi? I've heard both pronunciations, and whichever one I choose to use, I'm sure I'll get it slightly wrong. But it is the name of India's largest slum. My question about it is, what is the largest industry there? And it's something that's worth thinking carefully about in 2025, since just several months ago, as I speak, a huge decision has been made about Dharavi. I'll talk about that for number 8. Here comes question 9. I've mentioned food already, and once again, as a British person, we have a great awareness of British food. The so-called Indian chicken tikka masala is probably the most popular dish in Britain, possibly with the exception of fish and chips and roast beef, but I wouldn't be so sure. Indian food is popular here. So when I went to India, I, of course, was keen to try a wide variety of different stuff, and it was all excellent. But this is the one question that I kept asking myself, and I couldn't resist going in to McDonald's in Mumbai to see if I could find out the answer. Because cows are sacred in Hinduism. I thought for one awful moment that I'd written scared there. I think that A needs to be completed. There we go. Cows are sacred in Hinduism, so what do Indians eat in McDonald's? If you've been to India or you lived there, this possibly wouldn't even occur to you as a question, but if you've never been there and you're aware of the menu in McDonald's, then would you be able to answer? What do you think? And last but not least, question 10. We can't go to India without talking about cricket. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm really looking forward to the answer to this question, because I've got something wonderful to show you. What record was set the last time India won the Cricket World Cup? Now do jump to the timestamps to go straight to any of the answers to those questions. But if you want to stay with me, close your eyes, drift off as I mutter away, and we'll find the answers. Now then, when did the population of India exceed 100 million people? And for this, I'm not just going to be talking about India. I'm going to be talking about the whole world. We started with this on the screen, and I didn't make any comment about it, but it is from a beautiful website which I first discovered during COVID times, because they had a running count of the COVID cases in any country and indeed around the world. And so this is a website called worldometers.info, and if you're anything like me, you will while away hours looking at it. www.worldometers.info. And as you can see, it has a running count of the world population. Now, obviously, there are not people making notes in hospitals even as we speak and updating the system. This is all an algorithm based on the birth and death rates of every country, which are fed into the computer here. And I don't know if you noticed that when I was first speaking at the start of this video, that said 240. So the world population has grown by 2,000 people in the time that I've been talking. And if you go to this website now, of course, it will be much higher. Now, the reason I asked that question, oh, there it's uploading there, you see it's live. The reason I asked this question is because not so very long ago, on not sure the exact dates, some of the news reports were the 24th of April 2023. It was certainly April 2023, and that is about a year before I visited India. This is the point at which the population of India exceeded the population of China to become the largest in the world. And one thing that we can do on this website is that we can go down here and we can actually see live figures for the 20 largest populations. And there's India right at the top. The latest update on this website says 1,467,658, sorry, not 600, 1,467,058,648. It's just gone up as I was talking, and oh, in fact, we can see it growing. And so the population of India is growing by one person every second or thereabouts. China has 1,415,000,000. So you can see there's a difference of 50 million there already, and it's only about 2.5 years since India overtook China, and 50 million is the gap already. And when I spotted that, I thought, well, this is so extraordinarily large. When did India start to become crazy overpopulated? And I thought 100 million would be a good cut-off point, because at present there were 16 countries whose populations are more than 100 million. There's Vietnam with 101.7 million, Democratic Republic of Congo has 113.7 million, and then so on. We get the Philippines, Egypt, Japan, Mexico, Ethiopia, Russia, Bangladesh, Brazil, Nigeria, and then the top 5, Pakistan, Indonesia, USA, and then China and India. And so all but 16 nations on Earth currently have fewer than 100 million people. So exactly how far back into history do we have to go to reach the point where India reaches that number, 100 million? What do you think? I had a guess before I looked it up, and I looked it up when I was in India, and I've also double checked it in order to show you here on this article about the demographics of India. And this has got data. I do like to double check where things come from, and Wikipedia isn't always to be trusted, but I think with historical statistics and so on, it's usually quite good. This whole article has data from a publication called the Atlas of World Population History, published in New York in 1978, and I looked this up when I was in my hotel in Delhi. I remember I'd joined a tour to be taken round some of India's highlights up in the north, and our wonderful guide was standing at a subway station in Delhi, pointing out some key stations in the map that we should be aware of to find our bearings. And he casually said, well, of course, India has the largest population in the world. And here we were in a busy subway station with people racing past us in all directions. It was a little bit intimidating, I must admit, because I much prefer a quiet mountainside over a hectic city. But there we were in Delhi. And I asked myself this question, when did India's population exceed 100 million? And there's a nice little table here as part of this article, which has the historical population of India, starting from 10,000 BC. And of course, this is all speculation, this is not a historical record. Historical records about population only really started in earnest, I think, after the Second World War. It's a very, very recent thing. So this is all estimated, but we can see that in around about 10,000 BC is when 1 million people are thought to have been exceeded in India. And we'll just zoom down all the way down to the bottom to get to the present day. We see, with the last official figure, 2011 is 1.2 billion. As we've seen, that is now no longer true, not by a long shot. So how far back do we have to go to get to 100 million? What do you think? Well, my guess was maybe 1700, something like that. 300 years. Does that sound fair? Well, let's go back and have a look. In the year 1700, there it is. 1700, we got 161 million, so we're getting there. But actually, look at that, 101.9 million is in 1300 AD. And so the point at which it passes 100 million is somewhere between 1200 and 1300 AD. 700 years or more, slightly more than 700 years. That's just astonishing, isn't it? That this figure, which is slightly arbitrary, but it's a handy benchmark. Only 16 countries have more than 100 million people today, and yet India had that many 700 years ago. Well, you can understand my slight trepidation about visiting a place which was surely going to be hot and hectic and crowded and hard work. I really was anxious. That's the answer I'm going with. The late 13th century 700 plus years ago is when 100 million people were exceeded in India. Now, I did hint earlier on that actually India surpassed my expectations in every sense, apart from my expectation that it was going to be hard work. It was not. It was nothing but a treat from start to finish. And over the course of this video, I hope to give you a flavour of why. What I'd like to do on the map here is just put a little point to the places that I am talking about, and the first of them is Delhi. I mentioned that I was on the Delhi metro when I was getting a little anxious about just how many people were outside and inside. So I think Delhi, where's Delhi? I think Delhi is it that little place there? Yes, it is. Yeah, because that's Uttar Pradesh there, and that's Rajasthan. So Delhi is there, and I think that is a pretty good approximation of where the city of Delhi is. By the way, you're probably aware the capital of India is officially New Delhi, and so there is a New Delhi and an Old Delhi, but not one person that I spoke to whilst I was there actually called it New Delhi and Old Delhi. It's just Delhi. So that's why I'm using that word too. Now, to question 2. And just as a little nod to the gentleman I'm going to be talking about, if you don't see the man's face in India, you certainly see his glasses. Have a look at this and you'll see what I mean. Now that is a photograph I took on the train, which was travelling from Delhi to somewhere else, which we'll get to shortly. And you can see that this is a notice from Indian Railways. It says, following the footsteps of the torchbearer of cleanliness. There he is. And up in the corner of the poster is his glasses. And I gather that this is an environmentally friendly public cleanliness campaign. It is not just Indian Railways, I think, but a government initiative to remind everyone, come on, this is everybody's home. Please help us to keep it clean. The relevance to the railway is... Oh no, I beg your pardon, it's not an anniversary of the railway. I thought it was 150 years of Indian Railways, which could be the case. Indian Railways are probably something like that age, but this actually celebrates the birth anniversary of the father of the nation. So here we are in the world of Gandhi, and that's why I've asked this absolute staple of pub quizzes. What was Gandhi's first name? Go on, say it out loud if you haven't done so already. Anyone like to change their mind? Mohandas was Gandhi's first name. And I'm sure that somebody watching this has just said, well, yes, I know. Doesn't everybody know that? Well, I would venture to say, no, everybody doesn't. Because somebody watching this will probably have just said Mahatma was Gandhi's first name. It's probably quite a common assumption in the West that Mahatma Gandhi is the man's actual name. But, of course, Mahatma isn't his first name. He was called Mohandas Gandhi, and Mahatma is actually a title. It's a bit like something like Sir or the Spanish Don, which other people bestow on a person. Yet the difference with Mahatma is it's not an official honour. It's not the government giving it as an award, as is the case with a Sir and a Don. The venerable or the honourable might be an English equivalent. It actually comes from Sanskrit, two words, Maha and Atma, and those two words mean great soul. And it's thought that it was first attributed to Gandhi. Somebody did call him that in his lifetime, during the phase when he was arguing for an independent India. It was a Bengali poet called Tagore, who has been called the poet of India, and he referred to Gandhi as Mahatma, something like your honour, I suppose, and it stuck. I wonder if Gandhi liked being called Mahatma. He was, of course, an advocate of non-violent protest, of social justice. He stuck up for the everyman, didn't he? And so I do kind of assume that he's not the kind of person that would really have enjoyed people calling him Mahatma. But I haven't seen anything to suggest that he publicly disowned it. You may know different, particularly if you are in India or have been there more than me. Please do leave a comment if you have a greater insight, or if you can think of a better English equivalent, because it means great soul, Mahatma, but great soul is not something that we would call anyone. I've suggested it's a bit like Sir or the Spanish Don, but maybe that's not bang on. So do please share your wisdom if you have some. But in terms of the answer to the question, Mahatma Gandhi was actually called Mohandas. And I mentioned that I saw that image of Gandhi when I was on the train, and so what I'd like to do next is I'm not going to draw the actual train journey apart from anything else, because it was an overnight train journey, and so we could have gone round in all sorts of loops for all I know. I'm pretty sure what the route would be, but I don't want to get it wrong. So what I'm just going to do is add the destination, and I think it's somewhere in Uttar Pradesh, which is this state here, and I know that it's over to the eastern side of it. How far south? I'm going to plump for about there. And this is the city of Varanasi. And it takes us to our third question. Who is Mother Ganga? And to answer that, I'm going to show you a beautiful map. I did think about trying to draw my own, or even to try and draw something onto this map of India, but I'm no artist, and there are some great artists out there, so I'm going to leave it to them. But I am going to attribute credit where it's due. This is available for use on Wikipedia, and if you care to use it, they ask for a credit for the author, so I shall. This is by an artist called P. Fly, and as you can see, it is a map of the River Ganges basin. There it is, rising in the Himalayas, flowing east across Uttar Pradesh via Varanasi, which I just mentioned, and off it goes down through Bangladesh and into the Bay of Bengal. So if we were to put it on this map of India, then it would come down from here, I suppose, and it would swoop down and run sort of parallel between the Nepalese border and the southern border of Uttar Pradesh, through Varanasi and then onto the sea. But you can see that it is just a tiny area of India, really, and yet it is an area where hundreds of million people live. Because the River Ganges is the centre of everything in Hinduism. It is the origin of life. And Hindus, of course, believe that they must bathe in it at least once in their lifetime, and many do it far more. And possibly the most arresting sight in Varanasi Varanasi was the site of bodies being cremated on the ghats, the stone steps by the river. So we have this idea that the river in Hinduism is the mother of all life, and you give your life back to it at the end. It is the holiest river in the world. It's dear to, well, millions of people, whatever proportion of the world that is. If it's something like 1 billion people, then that's 1/8 of the people in the world. So this is a significant river, and therefore, if you haven't worked it out already, we can say that Mother Ganga is what we know in English as the River Ganges. When I was in Varanasi, I had a bit of downtime, and I watched a documentary about the Ganges, and it was a typical BBC style documentary looking at various people's views of the river, and of course it talked about how sacred it is in Hinduism. But it also talked about the reality in the 21st century, and the reality with rising temperatures, which means that the glaciers in the Himalayas which feed it are shrinking. I mean, it's a horrific thought that one day those glaciers might disappear, and the water which feeds the river, the very essence of the mother of all life, may not actually be there in the future. It's an extreme prediction, but some would say not an unrealistic one. And then of course you have the fact that this holy river is the same river that is used to fuel industry, and that same industry pumps its pollution back into the river, and so it is also among the world's dirtiest rivers. It's such a contradiction. Yet when I was there in Varanasi, I think it was 2 nights, it may have been 3 actually. Yes, it was 3 nights. And we went out on the River Ganges, once at sunset and once again at sunrise. And it was the one place which totally transformed my fears and anxieties about being in this place of so many people. Varanasi is so spiritual, and there was a line in the guidebook that I read about visiting the temple, the holiest of the Hindu sites in Varanasi. One of the holiest sites in Hindu full stop is the golden temple in the middle of the city. And the guidebook talked about the procedure that you have to go through to get your tickets, and then because of security you have to leave your phone in a locker, and practically everything apart from the shirt on your back goes into a locker. You hand in your shoes before you go into the inner section. And there are thousands of people, because this is a site of Hindu pilgrimage. People have travelled sometimes on foot for many days to get there, and so it is ever so slightly crowded. And the guidebook said, rather unfairly, if you're not fussed about Hindu temples, it's probably not worth the hassle. And by the time I went there, I'd been in Varanasi for, I think, a day and a half. And I thought, this is a city with all the stereotypes of India. The narrow, crowded streets, the constant honking horns, the tuk-tuks and the bicycle rickshaws weaving in and out, the smells and the sounds, the cows walking past you in the street, of course. And yet, in spite of all of that, and in spite of how afraid I was of basically having a meltdown because of the number of people, I loved it. And that is purely and simply because of that river. After walking down through the streets, and you come down some steps, and suddenly the Mother Ganga is in front of you. It's like no other riverside I've ever seen. There's just such a sensation of how spiritual that place is. And I've been to religious sites of many types around the world. I don't think I've ever been to any other city where the whole place just felt spiritual. I really felt I'm just one of 8 billion people here. I am nothing, most of these people are nothing. And when we've all returned to dust, most of us will be forgotten. But you know what? It doesn't matter. We're all here as part of a greater thing. I truly thought that when I was by the river. And the reason I'm holding this little pottery cup is that just before we got on the sunrise boat trip on the Mother Ganga, we sat there by the side of the river drinking chai, and this rather slightly imperfect little cup with its knobbly ring around the knobbly rim, I should say. This is just a wonderful example of dust to dust. Pottery comes from the earth, and it's the most perfect recyclable material, isn't it? You could just shatter that back down and stamp it into the ground. I decided not to. As you can see, I brought it home as a keepsake, and just holding it takes me right back to the magic of that place. Well, you've heard me wax lyrical enough about Varanasi. Suffice to say, if there is one place I recommend above all others in India, Varanasi would be it. Cheers. Now, where are we going next? Before I show you question 4, let's just pop it on the map. We're staying in Uttar Pradesh. Actually, the place in question is on this Ganges map. There it is. It shouldn't come as any surprise that a first-time visitor to India went to Agra. Where is it within the state? It's right in this sort of southwestern corner of Uttar Pradesh. It's not that one, is it? It's that one. It's about here. Agra. And on our little trip, I took the overnight train from Delhi to Varanasi, and then after several days took another overnight train from Varanasi to Agra. And, well, what did we do in Agra? That doesn't take much working out either. We went to the Taj Mahal, of course. And we also went to Agra Fort. That's a place which doesn't get the fame it deserves because the Taj Mahal rather gets all the glory. But Agra Fort was the place where the man behind the Taj Mahal also lived. It's come to us as a museum now, but it was originally a royal residence. Well, of course, the Taj Mahal is a mausoleum, and it was commissioned by, what was his name? I must admit I haven't committed that to memory, but I can check. Shah Jahan. He had the Taj Mahal built to be a glorious mausoleum where his beloved wife was buried. He was also buried alongside her after his death. But the cruel thing, and the relevance to Agra Fort, is that when he became unable to continue his rule, he handed over the royal seat. We're talking about the 17th century here. He handed over the imperial seat to his son, but this prompted an argument between the sons, and there was a war of succession, and the original son lost and was killed by the other son who won, and the son who became the emperor, who assumed the throne, he actually imprisoned his father in Agra Fort for the 7.5 years that remained of his life. And the reason that was so cruel is that from Agra Fort you can look across the river valley, look across the forest, and you can see the Taj Mahal on the horizon. He made his father look at his wife's mausoleum from afar without ever being able to go and visit it. They were a strange old bunch, weren't they? But then that's kings and emperors of old, generally, isn't it? Now, the question about the Taj Mahal was, why are there 4 minarets leaning? And this picture that I'm showing you now is not the classic picture of the Taj Mahal, because you normally see it from afar. I'm not showing you the picture that you normally see because you know it. There's the mausoleum, which of course you can go in, you can see that there's people up here, so you can both walk around it and walk inside it. And the mausoleum in the centre is surrounded by 4 minarets, one on each corner. And the reason I took the picture from this angle is you can just see I've tried there to line up in my vision a vertical wall of the mausoleum with one of the minarets in the background, and it's the best I could do to actually capture on a picture that the minaret is not exactly parallel to the vertical wall. It is leaning slightly away. The same is true of this one, although the angle of the camera doesn't allow that to be seen. But when you're there in real life, you can just appreciate it, that the 4 minarets are leaning out. So, any idea why? Actually, there are 2 reasons. The first is for want of a better word, it's an optical illusion. I haven't studied architecture for 3 years of an undergraduate degree followed by a master's, and therefore I can't even begin to understand why. But apparently, if the minarets were exactly vertical, they would not look vertical from a long way away. And the one thing about the Taj Mahal is it's supposed to wow you from a long way away before you get up close. And the way you enter it is that you go through security and so on, and you go into outer courtyards and so on, and then you finally make your way through an entranceway, and the arch around the entrance frames the Taj Mahal such that you approach it with nothing but the entire Taj Mahal in view. And if the minarets were exactly vertical, they would look wrong. I kind of get that. I have no capability of really understanding why, but I can sort of accept that proportions when seen a long way away are very different from what's up close. So it's all about what you can see as you first clap eyes on it. But there's a second reason, and that is to prevent damage in the event of earthquakes. Just imagine that there is an earthquake and the tower, I suppose being a tall, thin thing, is less stable than the main building itself, and so it's the most likely to fall down first in the event of an earthquake. Well, if it does fall down, the last thing you want it to do is to fall onto the mausoleum itself. And so that's why, as you can see here, the minarets actually lean slightly away from the main building, and therefore if an earthquake comes along, they're just going to collapse in the other direction. Isn't that brilliant? Gosh, I wish I had enough space in my brain to understand how you think of these things. I mean, it's just astonishing that there are people that can design things and think of something like that. What I hoped to be able to tell you in this little section was something about the Taj Mahal that maybe you didn't know, and that's what I decided to go with. If you did know that, and you have been to the Taj Mahal, may I set you the challenge of leaving a comment and see if you can wow me in return, and indeed impress anybody else who comes along later. Do you know any other better fact about the Taj Mahal? Now, it's flag time. It's a moment which is going to come along in most of the videos on this channel, I think. And I make no apology for that, because I mean, it's the bread and butter of geography, isn't it? And the reason oh gosh, for a moment I almost got sidetracked by that one. That's not the Indian flag. The reason I have included the Indian flag at this point in our journey is that Agra was the first place where I noticed that it seems to be a very common thing in India to decorate trees with lights in the colours of the flag. I'm sure you know that on the Indian flag we've got 3 horizontal stripes. We might casually say that's orange, white and green. In fact, I think it's technically it's saffron, not orange. The law of averages should be that the flag I'm looking for is in the pile I picked up first, but apparently luck is not on my side. So you've got your 3 horizontal stripes, saffron, white and green, and when it goes dark, and there we go, when it goes dark and the lights come on, you can admire the trunks of the trees with strings of lights wrapped all around them, and at the top they are a saffron colour, in the middle they're white, and at the bottom they're green. Now, in my view, it should be the law for every country to do that. India does it very well. But the bit of the flag that isn't on the trees is that bit in the middle. I gather that when Gandhi was first commissioning possible flags for an independent India, the image in the middle was a spinning wheel, such that you might use when you're making cloth. And this was, amongst other things, supposed to represent the hard work and the talent in India. People were able to make their own clothes, possibly to a greater degree than many other countries. And so this seemed like an appropriate symbol, but upon independence it was changed to a wheel, and in that wheel there were 24 spokes. So, hence question 5. Why are there 24 spokes in the wheel at the centre of the Indian flag? Now, a very obvious thought is that they might represent the number of states. At first glance that seems realistic, but no, it's not. It's much lovelier than that. And I must admit I'm slightly anxious about explaining the answer, because this is the sort of topic which I am fascinated by, but at the same time don't really feel entirely equipped to answer. And it is a religious thing, and like many things where religion is concerned, I think if you don't grow up in a religion and if you don't live it, you can never truly understand it. You can never fully comprehend what the ideas behind religious beliefs are. And so I've done my best to try to understand. First, by talking to my guide in India, asking him, what is that in the middle of the flag? And then by reading about it subsequently. I feel I'm halfway there. And so I think I can give you a basic answer to the question, but if anyone does want to enlighten us with a further explanation or a more succinct one, then I'd be absolutely thrilled if you'd leave a comment. But this is what I've understood. This is a principle in Buddhism. So in other words, something that Buddha taught, and I'll write it on the sheet here. The significance of the 24 spokes in the wheel is the principles of Pratityasamutpada. Pratityasamutpada, which translates as a dependent origination. Now that translation isn't very helpful in terms of explaining what it means. But the idea is that there's a set of 12 stages of suffering which the Buddha taught that every being goes through. And you start these stages with total ignorance, and then you have a conditioning of the mind. In other words, you become aware. Then you acquire other senses, sight, hearing, and so on. And I'm not going to list all 12 of them, but it goes through until you get to birth, and then at the end of the sequence is death. 12 stages of suffering for every being. But the idea of the pratidyasamutpada is that everything in life and everything in the universe is interdependent. And so if you have one thing, you must also have another thing. It's like event and consequence, or cause and effect. So you have 12 stages of suffering, and then you have the 12 results of them, or the 12 things on which they are dependent, and those things are in turn dependent on them, that everything is interdependent. And this idea in Buddhism is represented by the Ashoka chakra. The Ashoka chakra is the name of the blue symbol in the middle of the Indian flag. Chakra, of course, is a word which we're sort of aware of now in the West, particularly if you've been to yoga. People say, well, how are your chakras? And they're talking about points of the body where energy goes in and out. Well, the word chakra is a Sanskrit word for wheel. And those 24 principles, so the 12 stages of suffering and their consequences, or the things that go with them, they're shown in the shape of a wheel, because, of course, a wheel is representative of a never-ending circle of life. So this is much more beautiful than, perhaps it's 24 because there were 24 states. It's a more difficult idea to comprehend, but it's a far more wonderful one, I think. And as I say, if you can put it in a sentence better than me to explain exactly what the Ashoka chakra depicts, then I'd be absolutely delighted. But I hope we've gone some way towards it. The 12 stages of suffering plus their 12 effects. And if we discover another flag in the course of making these videos that is a more beautiful story than that, well, it'll be quite overwhelming. Thank you, India, for that. Now, where are we going next? Ah, yes. We're leaving Uttar Pradesh, and we're actually going on a drive of some 6 or 7 hours, but in the context of this enormous country, it's not going to be very far at all. How far do we have to go? I'm going to say, is it north or south of Agra? Let's just borrow our map of the Ganges. Slightly south of Agra, and to the west of up there maybe. Now I was in two minds about what question to ask for Jaipur, because it was in Jaipur that I learned to dance as if I was in a Bollywood movie. And nobody wants to see that. I mean, nobody wants to see me dancing. I mean, the original Bollywood movie is no doubt sensational. But since I am no dancer, I thought I would be on safer ground with the Vrihat Samrat Yantra. It's in Jaipur and it's the world's largest something. Well, if you don't know, if you have no idea, let me give you some clues. It is at a place called the Jantar Mantar. I'll tell you what that means shortly. It was built in the early 18th century, 1720s into 30s. And at the Jantar Mantar, which is an observatory, there are 19 instruments for the measurement of astronomy. And I'm going to show you two pictures of the supreme instrument, which is, by the way, a rough translation of that word. Samrat Yantra, I gather, means the supreme instrument, and this is it. There's a wall. That's vertical, although the camera doesn't capture that perfectly, but it is actually vertical. And it goes down a diagonal slope, and then if we look at that picture there, you can see that on either side of the wall there is a semicircle, and here we can see the real key. Look at how the shadow of this side of it is cast onto the semicircle. And that is because it is measuring time. Yep, it is the world's largest sundial. The world's largest sundial. And the astonishing thing about it is that the sheer size of it. There's a specific word for the wall, which we see from the side here, and there in the middle there. That wall on the gnomon, Gnomon, gnomon is the correct word. That is 27 meters high. 27. And therefore, if the wall's 27 meters high, you can see from the dimensions of it that is an extraordinarily large instrument. And remember, this is built in the 1730s, 300 years ago. 300 years ago. Somebody knew enough about astronomy to be able to build that. I mean, that's just mind-blowing, isn't it? And I gather that as the sun, I hope it's obvious how it works. The sun is over here and it's casting the shadow of the side wall onto the semicircle. And the semicircle will have hundreds of markings on it, and this can measure the correct time to an accuracy of 2 seconds. It obviously helps that Jaipur is a fairly sunny place. It'd be a bit of a waste of time building such a mammoth thing in England. But in the heat of India, it just works, and it is one of 19 instruments at the Taj Mahal in Jaipur. By the way, if you do want to see it in action, there is a website where you can see a time-lapse video of the sun casting its shadow and moving across the day. Fairly easy website to remember, jantarmantar.org, JANTARMANTAR, jantarmantar.org. Well worth having a look at the world's largest sundial, as well as the other 18 instruments, which are far more complicated and would hurt my brain if I tried to explain them. But as well as being the simplest, I think that's also the most striking, because it's so large. Now, on we go to question 7. And this is where colonial history rears its ugly head. I rather fancy this school and college atlas from, I think, the 1920s, which belonged to my grandfather. It's going to be a star of the show in this channel. Here's the exact page I want. And in fact, there's 2 maps of India there. You can see that's obviously that's a map of elevation, isn't it? And that just jumps out at me straight away because you've got the high ground there. And the map to the side of it is more interesting from the point of view of place names, simply because the other one doesn't have many place names on it. Since this book is already falling apart, it is 100 years old after all, I'm just going to detach that book, detach that page, so we can look at it in isolation. And I want to think about these 3 cities: Bombay, Calcutta and Madras. They are here on this map of British India. Bombay obviously over here. Calcutta's up here. And Madras down here. Now, if we were to look at a modern map of India, they would of course be marked as Mumbai, Kolkata, starting with a K, and Chennai. So, which of them is from the same etymological root? Well, you look at the words Bombay and Mumbai, they do seem very similar, don't they? Because you've got the vowel in the first syllable, which is fairly close to each other. You've got the diphthong in the second syllable, A and I, and then you've got the the other consonant sounds are made at the lips. So you can well imagine maybe that was a local word, Mumbai, and British people heard it and rendered it in their own spelling, and it became Bombay. It's certainly possible that may be true. It seems almost certain, doesn't it, that is the case here, because Kolkata, the modern name, and Calcutta, they are surely just a local alphabet and an English alphabet attempting to say the same thing. Whereas Madras, which is now known as Chennai, well, those two words seem to have nothing to do with each other. And so let's go backwards. If that's what you assumed, as I did, about Madras and Chennai, then you'd be right. They come from two different place names, basically. The British, when they first got there, they discovered that there was already a small place in the current city now, but back then a fairly small place, and it was called Madras Pattinam, and it therefore gave its name to the city of Madras. When the Indian government and then the state governments after them decided to change the names of Indian cities to detach themselves from the colonial history bit, this happened in the 1990s and the early 2000s, didn't it? They decided they would go to a different place name, which also previously existed. I gather that was Chennai Pattinam, named after a local ruler from before the days that the British came along. But it was a different place. They were originally local names, both of them, but the one that the British had chosen was not the same as the one that the state government chose when they decided to rename it in I think that was in the 1990s. I think that one. I think Calcutta, was it 96? Yes, 96. Now, I beg your pardon. Madras and Chennai was 1996. Calcutta when was that? That was 2001. That the spelling Calcutta was changed to Kolkata, and they do both come from the local Bengali name Kalikata, which is the name of a Hindu goddess, Kali, and I think it means something like Kali's place. So they do come from the same origin, whereas those don't. It wouldn't surprise me if that's what you thought. But what about Bombay and Mumbai? As I said, it is fair to assume that they come from the same origin because they look similar, but in fact, there is another suggestion that they don't. And this is the suggestion that I was told when I was in Mumbai. Mumbai comes from Mumba, which is the patron goddess in Hinduism, the local goddess. And Bombay actually comes from Bombaim, which is Portuguese for good bay or good harbour. Bom Baim, suggesting that the Portuguese who arrived before the British had already established that name, and the British just went with it when they took it over. It's worth mentioning before we leave this map behind that, of course, up here, for example, we have Rawalpindi, and as it happens, I have been there as well, but it is not in modern-day India. Rawalpindi is just to the south of Islamabad, the current capital of Pakistan. The city of Islamabad isn't here because it didn't exist yet. And over here on the eastern side we also have what would now be Bangladesh. This is the sort of thing which we keep historical atlases for, isn't it? Rightly or wrongly, this was previously a much bigger thing. British India included what is now Pakistan and Bangladesh. We will return to the topic of what the British left behind before we finish. But first we must go into the complicated world of Dharavi. I've seen it referred to as India's largest slum. I've also seen it called Asia's largest slum, although actually I think that's not right anymore, because there's one in Karachi which is even bigger. But it's possible that one could be geographically bigger, a bigger area, whilst another could be the biggest population. It doesn't really matter. But it is certainly India's, and it is in Mumbai. Which is the next place I went on my trip. And I don't know how you may feel about this, but I went on a walking tour of Dharavi when I was in Mumbai. I know that this is something that may not sit well with some people. In fact, I've seen videos on TikTok and so on where people have been filming themselves in Dharavi, and they've said, oh, here I am in the slum where they filmed Slumdog Millionaire. And some people don't like that. Some people have said, what an incentive thing to do, treating such an area as a tourist attraction. Well, I would agree to an extent. Certainly taking videos and taking photos was not really an appropriate thing to do. But I went along with a tour company called Reality Tours, and they're easily found. Just search for Dharavi slum tour, and part of their mission, part of the ethos of showing tourists around is that they are putting some of the money that you're paying them into projects that supply education and sanitary projects and so on. So this is their the justification for their existence. Well, if you're not really aware of Dharavi, let's just have a look at Google Maps here, and we can see just zooming out into Mumbai in general there. The great problem they have in Mumbai, which I think is the most populous city in India, the great problem they have is, here's the original city here on this peninsula. Indeed, I think it was even an island, and it either silted up or it was reclaimed. So it's a peninsula now, I believe. But the great problem they have is they've got nowhere to go. The city is expanding in terms of population. Where are they going to put everyone? And right here in the middle of it, in that area, bordered by railway lines and by a creek to the north, there is an area of a couple of square miles with over 1 million people living there. And it is this slum called Dharavi. And it's, of course, upsetting, and possibly people might have some criticisms for me saying that I went there as a tourist, but it is also fascinating. And you know what struck me? Far more than in so-called safer cities, there was such a sense of community, a sense of hard work, a sense of welcome, and a sense of friendliness that the people that we spoke to, who granted would have been contacts of the tour agency, they really seemed proud of their achievements, proud of their achievements in business, proud of their humble homes. And therefore it's a bit of a difficult issue when the government comes along and says, you know what we'd really like to do? We'd like to move everybody out of the slum and build a brand new city here. Now, if I was writing a geography thesis for my degree, then this would be a fantastic topic. A thesis about how you empty a slum and totally reinvent and redevelop a city. But writing about it in a thesis and actually doing it in real life are very, very different things. And what the state government, the Maharashtra government, Maharashtra is the state where Mumbai is. What the Maharashtra government have proposed to do in collaboration with a a local billionaire, is to redevelop over the course of 7 years this whole slum area, and they're going to provide free housing for anyone who was resident in Dharavi since before the year 2000, and then depending on the time that you arrived and whereabouts in the slum you live, that will give you different entitlements to be rehoused. On the one hand, there are people in Dharavi, I'm sure most of them would certainly like to live better lives and live in more comfortable and spacious places. But there are many who don't have documents to prove when they arrived, because they maybe didn't have them in the first place, or what they did have was destroyed in a fire. And perhaps most tricky of all is it's all very well moving the people out, but what do you do with all the industry that's there? That slum is the engine room of the city. It's home to thousands and thousands of businesses which generate over $1 billion a year. I would go so far as to say almost everything in Mumbai depends on Dharavi to some extent. They have a huge network of interconnected businesses that produce leather goods. One business will supply the original hides, another will clean them, another will dye them, someone else will turn it into bags, someone else will then stitch those bags, another person will embroider them. There'll be so many different businesses all working with each other to produce goods which then go off to sale. And that's just leather goods. Then you've got pottery, and you'll have the same supply chain. If you move people out of the slum and they go to different places, then those businesses are just going to disappear. Businesses which have been there for generations and have taken generations to gain their reputation and gain their experience and their contacts, they're just going to be wiped off the map if you move the residents into a so-called better place. And I think that's what people are most anxious about. And it brings us to the answer to this question. What's the largest industry in Dharavi? And the answer is recycling. 80% of the plastic waste in Mumbai goes to Dharavi to be sorted and cleaned and then turned into something else where possible. And that will underpin all the other industry, the leather, the pottery, and everything else. You take away Dharavi, and you take away the foundations of Mumbai, basically. What a complicated thing to sort out. And it's hot news at the time of making this video. The plan was announced in, I think it was May of this year, 2025. So we will have to watch this space. Now we are staying in Dubai not in Dubai, we're staying in Mumbai for the last two questions. And as I said at the beginning, I couldn't wait to go to India for one reason, and that was to try all of the food. I, I, I often go to Indian restaurants in England at home, and every time I go to an Indian restaurant, I eat too much because it's always brilliant, and it is true to say that I put on weight when I was in India because every restaurant that I went to was brilliant, and you weren't just going once a week as you do at home here in England. We were going to Indian restaurants every day. Well, of course we were, because we were in India, but we were having huge portions every day and every mealtime, and not necessarily lavish curries and so on, but also wonderful street food, samosas and dosas. Dosas is the biggest revelation of all, and in fact my final memory of all from India was flying out of Chennai airport down to Sri Lanka, and I think the finest dosa that I had in India was right there at the airport. It was absolutely sensational, very spicy as well. Just a word of warning: if you're not into spicy, be careful of dosas in India. But if you love Indian food like me, you're not going to go wrong. I thought for quite a while, what question can I ask in this quiz, in this little gentle jaunt around India on the subject of food? And I thought about some of the origins of food-related words, or when did recipes first start, and who invented them, and so on and so forth. But ultimately I came back to the one question which I kept asking myself from the very start of my trip in India, when I was in Delhi, at that metro station where our guide talked about the fact that India's population had just surpassed that of China. There was a burger joint at that metro station called Burger Singh, S-I-N-G-H, as in the Sikh. So, Burger Singh. If there's a better business name in the world, I don't know what it is. I didn't buy anything there, but it stayed in my mind, and wherever I went in India, I thought, well, wait a minute. We can see cows walking around in the streets here because they are sacred. Nobody eats cows here in India. So what on earth are the likes of Burger King and Burger Singh and so on doing in India if they don't sell beef? If cows are sacred in Hinduism, what do Indians eat in McDonald's? Well, thankfully I did have the opportunity to find out, because McDonald's opened in India, in one in Mumbai and one in Delhi in 1996. I haven't actually checked to see how many there are in other places, but I certainly saw them in Delhi and in Mumbai. And when I was in Mumbai, which was the last place that I was in India, I thought, well, I'm going to have to go in and find out. So have you got any guess? What do you reckon? They don't eat beef. So what do they eat? Of course, they don't eat pork either, but you don't get a great range of pork products on a McDonald's menu. fact is that a huge number of Indians are vegetarians, so no meat at all. Well, here we are inside McDonald's in Mumbai. And we do have chicken burgers. We have Makaloo Tikka burger. Wow. Aloo, of course, is potato. So that's a spicy potato burger. We also have deluxe paneer burger. That's the one I had. Paneer being the Indian cottage cheese. And is there anything else? Then we get combinations of cheese and vegetables, chicken and cheese. Well, I think we found our answer. My only conclusion about the fact that McDonald's serves cheeseburgers and potato burgers is that when Indian people leave their own country and go into McDonald's almost anywhere else, they might be in for a disappointment. I mean, it's a matter of opinion. I suppose it's a novelty when you're there, and maybe they may feel the same if you are from India and you're watching this. Maybe you have been in exactly the opposite position from me, and you've gone into a McDonald's elsewhere and been shocked to discover that you can get neither of those things normally. What did you think? Let us know. Do leave a comment. And so, the moment has arrived for question 10. What record was set the last time India won the Cricket World Cup? Now, I've got to be honest with you. I wish I was a greater cricket fan than I actually am. And the reason I'm not an enormous cricket fan is because I'm quite short-sighted. And actually, when I went to watch a professional cricket match a couple of years ago here in England at my local county, Somerset, I couldn't see the ball. I couldn't even see the ball when it hit me hard on the leg, having travelled fairly fast straight from the batsman's bat. If it weren't for the fact that somebody pushed me out of the way, it might have hit me on the head. And it was on that day that I thought, my good intentions of going to watch live cricket are probably over. But you can't talk about India without talking about cricket, and you can't be in India without seeing it. The night that I arrived in Delhi, went into a bar just down the road from the hotel, and there was cricket on the television. The next day I went to I think it's called the Lorry Gardens, or the Lodi Gardens, a park in New Delhi where there's several historic monuments, and at the entrances to the park they say no ball games and various other stern announcements like that, which of course nobody pays any notice to, because there was the next Sachin Tendulkar in waiting, and his friends and one of their fathers knocking cricket balls about. And you see it time and time again. My last memory of my last afternoon in Mumbai before I went to the airport was walking across a park to get to the central station, and there were hundreds of people. It was a Saturday afternoon. Hundreds of people were playing cricket in that park. I don't mind saying I walked fairly briskly across that park in case I got hit by another cricket ball, which I couldn't see coming. But the point is, it's infectious, isn't it? There is no greater legacy of the British presence in India than the fact that they brought cricket with them, and no Indian person will disagree with that. So, I totally understand the electric atmosphere surrounding cricket, even though I don't really get to enjoy it myself. However, there is an aspect of cricket which I love and I can enjoy from the comfort of my own home, and I can share it with you. And that is what we might call the sporting equivalent of maps. You're here because you're a geography fan. You love maps. You love flags. You love geography, statistics. At least I assume you love all of those things. And if there is one sport that does for geography what maps and flags and lists of population statistics does, it's cricket. Let's just show you this. This piece of art here is a score sheet from the 2011 Cricket World Cup final. And in that match, well, let's see what happened. India played Sri Lanka. And they played at a stadium whose name I prefer not to pronounce, actually, in the city of Mumbai, in the presence of 43,000 people. India versus Sri Lanka in the World Cup final in Mumbai. I mean, it's going to be special, isn't it? Assuming the result goes the right way. And what was the result? Well, the score sheet is divided into 4 sections, and this is actually produced by a friend of mine. It's called the Kit Harris score sheet, and he's done several for different matches. And on the left hand side you get the traditional scorecard showing the first innings and the second innings, and then on the right hand side you get a ball by ball account, which we'll look at in a minute. But if we just look at the scorecards for the 2 innings, the first one is Sri Lanka, and they scored 274 in their 50 overs. India, in reply, Well, look at those legends of Indian cricket. Tendulkar. Gambhir is, I gather, the coach of the Indian side as we speak. Kohli, absolute hero in Indian cricket. And the captain on the day, MS Dhoni. Well, remember they needed to beat 274, was it? Yes. They did so. They scored 277. India scored 277. And they did so in 48.2 overs, or 48 overs and 2 balls. That's to say they had 10 balls to spare. And the thing I really love about any cricket score sheet, really, but particularly this one, is the way that it just tells you the full story, much like we can look at any of the maps we've been seeing, and you can really dig deep into the story of a place by how well it is covered on a map. Well, here, let's just look over here at the ball by ball, where Dhoni comes into bat. There he is. He's arriving after 21.4 overs when India are 114 for 3. And in he goes to bat. And let's just pick an over. There was an over a little later where he's really on hot form there. Look at that one there. By now he's been joined by Yuvraj. And in this over, what over is that? The 44th. The first ball of 6, he is facing the bowler and he scores a 6. The second ball, he scores a single run, and therefore he ends up at the other end, and his colleague faces the third ball. He scores a single run, so they swap back to their original position, and in the remaining 3 balls of that over, there's no run. But isn't that just beautiful? Every single moment of this cricket match is represented on this page, which is available for printing. These can be ordered and printed in an A1 size. And you imagine that a quarter of it is A3, and then double it to A2, and then an A1. And for a single piece of paper, through the means of basically a load of numbers, for that to do the job of telling the story of a match is just astonishing. And we see right at the end here, this is the 49th over. And in the second ball of it, MS Dhoni hits a 6. And the score sheet even tells the story that there's 43,000 people there, and they're in Mumbai. And so, I mean, it doesn't take much imagination to wonder what happened next. Fireworks were sounded immediately. And so the record that was set is the fact that India managed to achieve that target of 275. which was the highest ever successful run chase in a World Cup match. And also, by the way, this is something that I quite like because it brings us back to geography. It was the first time that the World Cup had been won by the nation who was hosting it. The first winners on home soil. And I don't know if you've ever been in a country when a national team of a sport has won a World Cup. I've been in France when they won the Football World Cup. And I mean, they basically went absolutely berserk, driving around for hours, beeping their horns all evening. I rather think that if we'd been in India, in Mumbai, well, anywhere in India, on that day in 2011, the beeping of horns would have lasted not hours, but days and weeks. I mean, beeping of horns tends to be non-stop anyway in India, but you know what I mean. It would have been rather an atmosphere, don't you think? By the way, if you want to find more about the wonderful cricket score sheets there, do go along to cricketkit.org and you'll see some more wonderful examples. But for now, it's about time to end our little travels and to say thank you very much for staying to the end. If you've done so because you rather liked it, then do please press like and also subscribe for more of the same. Comment if you do have anything to say about any of the destinations I've talked about, or you can add anything which maybe I've missed. Plus, I've told you that I loved India. I certainly intend to go back one day, so if you'd like to recommend a place that I should include next time, I'd be absolutely thrilled. Thank you so much for joining me here on Travel Trivia ASMR. And until next time, bye for now.